Hey folks, so this video today is about kind of applying the things that we've been learning about. So these four criteria: authority, purpose, currency, and accuracy, as well as these three questions that we should be asking as we're taking a look at sources. Who's behind this info? What's their claim? How do they back it up? What's their evidence? And then what do other sources say? Focus on this lateral reading here. So the first one we're going to take a look at is actually that NPR story that we read earlier at the beginning of this week. So let me pull that up here and I'll kind of walk you through. Here's how I would kind of validate or criticize this information, because this is what I'll be expecting you to do with some sources a little bit for your assignment this week. So first thing I got to figure out is who is behind this information, right? So I might want to take a look at who Camilla is. And then I noticed that this is NPR. It's also under this heading called the two-way. So those are two things that I should probably know a little bit more about. So let's start with Camilla, which is really nice. I'm always appreciative when a news site gives me a little bio about the author. So I can take a read through here and learn a little bit about author Camilla Domonoski, and what she's done to maybe give her a little bit of credibility to write this article that she has. Other thing I might take a look at is just who is NPR. If you've never heard of NPR, you should probably educate yourself to what type of source this is. So I might take a look at NPR news source, and I just type in NPR news. It'll just bring me to the NPR news site. But if I take a look at NPR news source, it gives me a couple more options. So media fact checker, which is pretty good, and then this all sides. So the NPR media fact checker will just, again, it's not perfect, but it kind of gives me at least a perspective of where this site is falling. Is it not biased? Is it going to be in the middle, or is it going to be sort of leaning to the right, more conservative, or is it going to be leaning to the left, more kind of extreme liberal? And NPR gets a pretty good rating, maybe leaning a little bit to the left there. And generally, this site thinks that their factual reporting is pretty high. So I can read some reporting about NPR as a news site. So I like the site media site fact checker. I also really like this site All Sides, which is the first one that came up. And I like it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's got this really handy chart that generally is pretty solid. So this will tell you like what news sources and generally where do they fall? Are they kind of unbiased as you can be in a news source in the center? Do they lean to the left? Are they really far to the left? Or do they lean to the right? Or are they really far to the right? So you can kind of see like the difference between like CNN all the way over on the left, whereas Fox News kind of splits the line between I'm pretty far conservative to I'm really far conservative when you get into my opinion pieces. NPR, as you see in their news reporting, generally they do a pretty good job. They're pretty central, unbiased. When they get into their news reporting, you can see they lean a little bit towards that left. So keep that in mind. That just should be a filter in the back of your brain that helps me understand where this information is coming from. Okay. So if I click on this NPR news site, it gives me a little bit more information telling me about this source. So generally they're rated pretty central in terms of their news reporting. And what I really liked about this is that we could take a look at this third-party analysis. So again, I don't want to know what a source says about itself. I want to know what other people say about this source. So I can click on this Pew Research Center study, and it'll tell me this one here, where kind of the audience profiles are for different news sources. So basically, what type of people are reading different news sources. So you can see ABC News is generally pretty rounded. They have some conservative viewers, they have some liberal viewers, and a lot of people in the middle. Cool. Let's take a look at NPR. NPR, we see, okay, so generally they're rated as being down the middle, but their consumer base seems to be trending a little bit more liberal, definitely, than it does conservative, right? So that, again, might just inform us about who are the types of people who are reading this information. Who is their specific audience when we get to things that aren't necessarily fact-based reporting? Still with me? I hope so. Because that brings me to my next part. So if this was just a straight up news story, we could say, yeah, okay, NPR is generally pretty good. They're factual reporting. And there is some great factual reporting in this article. But that brings me to my next kind of tier down is I've got to figure out who the two-way is. So if I click on the two-way, okay, this isn't giving me a lot of information. I got to kind of scour this site. I've got to take a look around. And I think if I scroll all the way down, finally, there it is, a little about page. And I click on that about, and it says the two-way is an NPR blog that ran from 2008 to 2018. So it's not necessarily news reporting. This is opinion reporting from NPR. And that doesn't disqualify their information. That doesn't mean like, oh, this article's crap because it's from a blog. No, it's from a credible news source. We can read information about their who the author is. They list their sources. They link to their sources. They've got some good sources. It's just a little biased, and there's definitely an element of persuasion with it as well. So not totally wrong, but this should just filter in and be like, okay, I should take this with a grain of salt and make sure I'm making my own opinions based on an educated worldview. So let's dig a little bit further. Here's what makes this source stand out as like still being good, even though it's a blog. So there's one implication of a new study from Stanford. I click on that link, and guess what? It takes me to that Stanford study. This is critical, right? They have to tell me where this information is coming from. And this is a research study produced by Stanford University, a pretty credible university, I'd say. So this is an author's, a journalist's kind of take and explanation of what this study says. There is no way I'm necessarily going to read this study. Let's take a look at it really quick. Are you going to read 24 pages of a research study based on claims on social media? Probably not, would be my guess. And so this person's kind of interpreting it for you. So as I scroll down, this author does a really good job of just staying on this study, saying, here's what the study said, kind of here's my take on that study. They don't start pulling in a lot of other different sources that are uncredited. So that all is going for them. And again, they have links to the site of the materials that were used in the study. They also refer back to other Stanford press releases that was listed about the study. And they even bring up articles kind of explaining other perspectives on this study. So an article in Education Week, which is actually a site that we're going to take a look at here in a second. It's good that they pull articles in from other sources. That's good. That adds to their credibility. Not going to say it validates 100% everything that they're saying. It's just a lot better than some random person's blog. So there is good information here. And it's still quality. It's still a worrisome idea to think about. So even if you dislike Camilla's opinion about this subject, the fact that we are having this discussion, I think, is still relevant, right? We got to figure out how to decipher what's right and what's wrong on the internet. Okay, let's double check our questions. We kind of figured out who's behind this info. We took a little bit about their evidence. I forgot to mention their claim, which is pretty bold and right up at the front. If the children are the future might be very ill-informed. I don't like that. As a journalist, I don't like that. But they go ahead and defend it and list their sources. So I'm going to take their opinion and kind of process it. I'm going to use their opinion to help form my own, right? They're not going to form that opinion for me, but I can use some information here. So last question, what do other sources say? So this is what Camilla says. What do other sources say? And so I did 2 different web searches and came up with a couple of important sources, other outside sources that I found. So I first searched teens' ability to spot fake news. And so I took a look at this Common Sense Media. It had the first 2 results. And I also took a look at this BBC news article. And so the Common Sense Media looked through this one, and it was mostly just about news literacy, about how to teach students how to spot fake news. So that wasn't really that helpful. But this one was pretty good. Fake news. Can teenagers spot it? And this was actually posted in November 14th of 2018. So only 2 years ago, 3 years ago, as opposed to 5 years ago. And so reading this might really help me understand, like, is that other article up to date and relevant? Because this one was written a little bit more recently. The other search that I did for was student ability instead of teens ability. Student ability to spot fake news. And that came up with a couple of other sources here. So came up with 3 ones. The first one that I saw was this another Stanford study, this one done in 2019. And again, they're still saying that students are unprepared to judge the credibility of information. Meaning not necessarily that they're bad or they're good, but we need more work on it. Thus this lesson. And it's kind of building on that landmark study of 2016 that Camilla was writing about. Also came up this Education Week article where fake news is everywhere, but students can be taught to find it, right? So this is, again, not so damning of students, saying we just need to know how to look for fake news. And again, they're listing their sources. We could take a read through this article to learn even more information. And then the last one is that NPR News article pops up. It's a second hit. So obviously it's been searched a lot. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct, but there's a lot of other sources kind of pointing around and to it. Cool. And so this all would kind of lead me to make this determination for the NPR article. I'd give it a B for authority. You could maybe even slip into a C a little bit. It's kind of mid-range, right? This isn't an authority figure speaking on it. This is a journalist interpreting a news report. So probably not going to get that A, but reading about Camilla doesn't give me a whole lot to doubt her immediately. Purpose is C. It's definitely persuasion. It's an opinion. It's a blog post, right? But it's still a news blog posted on NPR where they do have some standards. They might be a little more left-leaning than other news sources, but it is good reporting about the tech industry. Currency, again, not perfect. I found a lot of new articles, but it's not terrible. I'm guessing that students' ability to identify fake news as a whole has not changed like substantially since 2016. But it may have changed a little bit though. And then lastly, accuracy, B again, or C. I could go C on this one if I was giving these grades. There's definitely some opinion, right? And I list that. But I still feel as if I understood what that research article was about, which is important because I'm probably not going to go read a research article, and I've got to find a news source that I generally trust to inform me about developments like this. All right, so your challenge is to take a look at these slides and see if you can evaluate this one. So you got to pretend the scenario is that your mom has just come in from home from work and you're playing video games, and your mom says, well, guess what? The World Health Organization just said that playing video games is a disease. And you're like, yeah, right, Mom. I'm going to go research this and prove you wrong. And you come across this article in your search. So you got to tell me, is this credible or is this not credible? So pause the video, take a look at these slides where I have a link to it before you go ahead and try to evaluate it on this scale. I'll put that up there. All right. Good luck, folks.